real world that walks the line. There's a rare few who think outside the box together for the crew. To break the equations, not down to any rule. Exposing to the world the universe's own view. It takes the talent of the craftsman, it takes the mind of the fool, to make the vision realize energy and matter in a duel. To a break, to a duel. The old man Bills was running through his head. Cheryl probably got it hiding under his bed. Penny up to Annie making power for days. Don't listen to a word that the straight dope says. Mike building batteries that power a ship. Victor comes and talking math, that's the water spiral dip. Sean chucking plasma bolts a mile long. Sheila on the video making tone chuck the prongs. Bernie breaking matter, they said it couldn't be done. And to all the people in the chat, I know you're having fun. So it's time to spend your Saturday with the dope and old man Bills.
Hello everybody and welcome. My name is Nathan, otherwise known as Old Man Bills. What's going on, guys? Joe will be here in just a little bit. Let's go ahead and kick it off. Buga, man, what do you guys think about it? You know, I did some research on this, and they said a couple things in one of the videos that I watched, and they weren't real clear about some stuff. So let's clear some stuff up. The outside is aluminum. It's not going to bounce back the way that they said. Excuse me, they're talking about a different part of it altogether. The inside of it, though, the resin will. So resin self-healing in itself, we all know that. But they made it sound like the outside was self-healing, which would mean that they couldn't put the inscription on the outside no matter what they wanted to if it's self-healed. So that's kind of self-defeating, isn't it? So we're looking at the inside resin that heals itself, and we're also looking at the fact that they have these little balls on the inside of it. I got some pictures here. Let me go ahead and put them up here. And so we're talking about this here, the Buga sphere, obviously. And let's see. Yeah, look at the outside, how pitted it is. Yeah, there's no way that's self-healing. We know that's aluminum on the outside. No question about it. The symbols, though, some of them are Sanskrit and some of them are symbols from high voltage. And you can tell because some of these symbols are actually painted on cave walls is where they got them from. And let's see if I can find the right one. Sorry, they showed this in the video. Let me just say that's a bad idea. So everybody knows what this is, right? You get inside of it. It's a huge electromagnet. That would just screw up everything. There's no way that they scanned it in one of these things here. Not even a chance that that happened. So they're just putting pictures together. Somebody doesn't know what they're talking about. This right here basically shows the Buga sphere. You can see on the outside right here. This looks like welding marks, guys. You can see the slag in there. You see it worse in here. It's pitted, it's slagged. That's what happens when you weld something and you grind it. That's the exact look of it. And here it's going to show it as well. I mean, that's not just cracking. That's cracking because that's where it was weakest. That's where it was welded. One thing that it is true, that the cerium, the neodymium and aluminum combined to create a battery, which is a very interesting feature of it. That means that the outside shell is actually a battery for it, which makes a lot of sense. But in this case, the neodymium is going to have a secondary purpose. If this thing's real, guys, and not a hoax, then basically at the core, what we should find is a bunch of little dots there. So let's see if we find that. And here they go. They're starting to show them in here. This is within the resin. That's not in the aluminum, I don't think. This right here. This is in the resin. So let's just go over this. Right here is a concentrated amount of little dots right here. And what I did was I pulled something from Grenier because he talked about this, and I just want everybody to understand this. If you're going to create anti-gravity, and I'll take this down for a second so I can be very clear about this. Anti-gravity is ions compressed within a zone that creates a sheath zone on the outside that is magnetic in one layer and diamagnetic in the next. If you do that, then you can create anti-gravity. That's about as simple as it gets. The way that you have to do it, though, is if you don't manually swirl the ions in there because they need a vector direction, it has to have high compression. When you have high compression, then the ions go together, right? And they start smashing, going down to the very smallest amount they can get to. They won't smash together, but the area will get confined. What happens is you get a positive ion that flips to a negative ion, and it creates in the sheath layer an opposite rotation. So you have normal rotation, you have a negative that pulls in to pull an opposite rotation that goes on like this. That's creating your locking layers. They call it the 3-layer effect. It's also biblical, I believe it is. You need a 3-layer effect in there, and you need those dots in there, which are the ions in there. Those are not electrons. I could tell you that right now. It doesn't work that way. You have a magnetodielectric on the outside of the wire. What slows it down is the ions themselves in the wire, which means that ions are inside the atom itself. That's what's slowing down anything. So the amount of ions dictate how fast energy can move over a wire, because the magnetodielectric goes like this. For those of you who question it, the electron test is plasma that goes out in one direction, and it always goes negative. They're not little balls. There's no ball in the test whatsoever. There's none of that. That doesn't show up on there. The only thing that shows up as a ball is ions. Ions, when they get put together, are showing up as balls. When you do magnetodielectric, it shows up as a field line. It goes around in the sphere, can show up that way. It can also show up on the outside of the wire. That's what's rotating around the wire, giving you your energy. It's a simple physics on the way this works. So this has the fundamentals of looking right. In the fact that it has a battery, it shows the ions in the center. It shows that they're compressed towards the core, but they're not all the way to the core. They're not making the correct structure, which makes a lot of sense. If you put it in a magnetic field, you start testing with a magnetic field, what happens? You're going to break apart the ions. They're going to pull apart. And you're going to get tubular structures that grow inside this thing. They say that they're for light. No. We've seen it in one of Gerald's experiments that he did. He works in a high ion field in order to create his 0 point, which is what the 0 point is. And what it does is it takes the resin itself and it eats away at it, and it makes structure inside of there like something's eaten through it completely. So what you get is a tunneling effect. And that's what they show in these pictures that's going on. So again, there's some things that are true about it that are in science and well known. The problem is the center is not geometrically done right. And then they say it had less weight, now it has more weight. Well, that's an understanding in physics, right? So the atomic weight is based on the compression of your ions inside the center of an atom. And they say it's protons, neutrons. Let me just tell you, it's really ions, okay? They talk about quarks, stuff like that. Quarks are not, there's no such thing as a quark. It's a mathematical problem they put in there as an invention, and it's garbage. It's actually ions, and it works like a, how do I say, like a 3-year system. You have positive in there, and then once you get a neutron, it has a negative in there, and then you get a switch in the field on the outside, which causes the rotation to be different. They're all in harmonic resonance as they build out. That's why the field will turn in a different direction, because it's in a harmonic of the inside of the ion itself. So you get a harmonic on the outside. That's about as simple as you could possibly make it to understand it. So when we do this, we look at the Buga sphere and we start seeing that the things are moved apart from the center. What does that mean? It means the atomic weight's changed. It's gone up. It means the density of it is less, right? So, or it means it has more weight in the atmosphere. In order to change that, you have to restructure it and get everything to condense back to the center. And when it does, it'll make a geometric pattern. When it makes a geometric pattern, then it starts messing with the atomic weight of everything. Because it's built on the inside and the outside shell is the the part that starts the sheath layering, that means that most of that whole sphere is covered inside the center portion of it, which means it's going to have a different atomic weight than the atmosphere itself. Which means, will it be anti-gravitic? Yeah. What would stop it from having that structure altogether? Hitting high voltage would do it. Because what you're doing is you're taking an AC high voltage and you're turning it into a lower voltage, right? But a higher amperage. And you're striking it at once. It breaks the ions apart and pulls them from the center. Therefore, the anti-gravitic property of it changes. That's pretty much what happens. So is this thing real or not? And I'll just say this. It has every sign to be correct. Is it correct, though? You see, you can know this, but it's kind of hard to fix it unless you know how to fix it. How do you recompress the ions in it? You're going to have to trigger this thing in order to do it. That's why the symbols on it matter, okay? So let's see if we can't bring this back up, and we'll just take a look for the symbols here. Let's see. Oh, by the way, here on the right-hand side is exactly what I was talking about. You see the stuff moving around in there. It's the ions moving. It's creating little trace trails. That's exactly the way Gerald's experiment looked when he got to that, and it started creating all those things. Let's go back. See if we got that top picture. Right here. Okay. Now, if you look right here, that is a symbol that is written on cave walls. That is well known. You see that up in the atmosphere. When the atmosphere has more energy and stuff like that, and you have more ions going in there, the UV layer that's out there stops blocking everything from sight, and you start to see high voltage things go on. In high voltage reactors, stuff like that, you'll see these kind of symbols that go on right here. This one here. This one right down here is another one. This one right here is another one, the diamond with a little dot in the center. And this one was the two sides right here with the dot in the center, right there. Let's see. And then you have the golden ratio. I believe it was down over here somewhere. And then back up here, you got this very top one right there, along with that one right there. Those are all high voltage symbols right there, all of them. So what happens is if you know that, then you understand the coding that's going on here. Ancient Sanskrit is the writing. Some of the translations are high voltage symbols. If you're going to restart this thing, or if it has a program in it, you're going to have to learn that. That makes it more believable in what's going on. A lot of people say, well, man, that doesn't show up in the Sanskrit. Well, that's because it's not. It's a simple symbol of high voltage. As soon as you have come to the technology understanding of the high voltage and everything, then this becomes very simple to everybody, okay? You can point those out and understand it, and you can get this thing going. So, look, does it look pretty much authentic? Yeah. Is the resin wrong? Let me just tell you, okay? And I think other people have said this too. Can you carbon date the resin? Yes, you can. Is the resin carbon dating going to help you? No, it's not. And I'll say this so you understand it. Resin's natural and grows on the earth. You can pull it from somewhere, and it could be 12,500 years old. Cool. We understand that. But you can pull it tomorrow from a tree. It'd be 1 day old. So now we look at it. Is that a carbon dating method we can rely on? Well, no, not necessarily, because I can take 12,500-year-old resin and put it back in there, and it's self-healing. It's what resin does. As soon as you heat the outside, the inside core resets itself and repositions. It's like making an electric, okay? If I run energy through this thing as an electric, then I can reset the field in there. I can reset where the ions go. I can give them the correct vector direction that they need. Then I can reset it with the resin and let it harden again. Because it has an outside shell, it's like putting aluminum on the outside of a electric. You're continuously putting the field around it. When you continuously put the field around it, and you have something that's acting as a battery with the layers that are going on, guess what? Now you got it. Now you got a self-sustaining system. That part of it's all true. Self-sustaining system inside this, built like an electric, the correct way with resin. Think about that. Yeah, it's got a lot of properties that make it true. It's got a lot of stuff on it that's bad, though. They said that this stuff's all laser inscribed on the outside. I hope not. Unless a 4-year-old got a hold of your laser, I mean, you got a problem right here. You can't go around saying, oh, man, it's perfectly laser cut. It looks like somebody went over there with a Dremel and cut it in. Just like James's rod, it looks like somebody went out there and just, cut it in that way. So, I mean, that's a bad thing. But could it be if it was 12,500 years old? Where does that land us? Basically gives us the understanding that it would be around the time of Atlantis. The technology would be that of Atlantis. So did they create it? Well, compared to some of the stuff that's going on, let's look at the way Atlantis is built. You have a core center structure. You have an outer ring, another ring, and another ring. What do you have? You have the correct understanding of plasma and what it does. Inner center core, another ring outside of it, another ring outside of that. What happens? Those things right there are in resonance, every single one of those layers. So what you're going to get is the correct understanding of how the energy actually works. That's what their whole physical thing was. So now we're sitting in a situation where you go, okay, this looks correct. Okay. Their city looks correct, but then we know Atlantis wasn't just one little city or two cities. That's a global civilization because the writing's everywhere. It's not old ancient Egyptian, it's ancient Atlantean. Joe, what's up?
Yeah, Friday dilemmas. You know how it goes.
We're getting through the first part of it, Joe. We kind of looked at the Buga and some of the stuff that makes it real, not real, and which things are debatable.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, a lot of the stuff that I see, I'm not terribly compelled by when it comes to like these UFO type phenomena things, But out of them all, I think that the Buga is probably the most convincing.
It has a lot of properties. We were just talking about how the outside layers of it would make a battery, how the inside was confined ions, okay? But it's also in resin, which resin holds in the ions and where they're supposed to go. And
Right.
if you change the configuration, right, then it looks like it's just going all over the place, like Gerald had in his coil when he resined it, and then it started, digging in everywhere and going everywhere. So that part matches. The fact that they're not
Right.
clustered right now changes the atomic weight of it. So it pulls out further. You know what I mean? Changing the atomic weight, pulls in closer, eliminates the weight and the gravity that we understand on the Earth.
Yeah, I mean, that's a good way to put it. It was interesting that you brought up Gerald's thing with when he coated it in resin, it got micro cavities, right?
Yes.
So what it ended up creating from those fields is cavitation pockets, and dematerializes, pushes out vacuum in the material, and then those uh, bubbles, if you want to call them that, I guess, they hold like the memory of the field energy. So because like in the wrap, for instance, right, when it forms the conditions, those are actually the conditions forming, and then the energy naturally begins to accumulate in a geometric way in those pockets. So it's actually quite interesting, and it is interesting that the Buga resin is a major component to it. And I know they said that they were kind of, you can't just drill into the thing. They can't just take a core sample out of it. They don't want to break it.
Yeah. Well, think about it this way. If it's resin, then it's like an electric. Okay, so with an electret, all you're doing is passing high voltage through it. You're trying to get a vector direction to happen on the inside of the ions there, and they're creating basically an E field on the inside, right? So what happens when you put an electret in aluminum foil? It continues to run the energy through it, but then if you put it through a battery on the outside, it recharges the battery. So it's a continuous loop of charging and recharging inside the core. But then it also keeps the ions in configuration so that they can compress and give you the outside zoning. So anti-gravity, it has all the qualities of it right there.
Yeah, no, I definitely agree with that. And it's all the same types of fields that we always talk about in the same relationships, which is kind of interesting. At least that's what they propose. It does. I mean, I think one thing that I find fascinating about it is that they really don't have the core sample of it to know exactly what's in there. I would have figured that there would have been some kind of, high level, non invasive type of testing, like especially, well, you probably couldn't put the thing in an MRI machine.
They showed
That's
a picture of it in an MRI.
right. But I mean, something similar because think about it this way, right? If you could make an accurate assumption to the point where you consider it fact that the Earth's core is iron based on the frequencies and what frequencies penetrate, what don't, and how they reflect and refract. If you could make that conclusion, you would think that they'd be able to do that on a small scale to the booster.
Yeah, well, they probably did. I think that I watched two different shows on this, Joe, and I think one was accurate and one was not accurate.
Hmm.
Like it had the accurate like metals and stuff in there, but then they elaborated on points that didn't belong in it whatsoever. You know what I mean? And I actually have one. If you want to take a look,
Sure.
And I'll just play this little segment here, guys, so you guys can see it.
Personally interviewed the gentleman who picked it up after it landed and the subsequent engineer that had it for about 30 days there in college.
Jay and David, I think are their names.
Yeah,
and
I spent a fair amount of time with them. And what's interesting is that, when they first picked it up, it weighed about 2 kilograms. Now it's 10 kilograms.
Right.
And I was talking to the scientists that work with Jaime Maussan, and they couldn't make it. I said, no, this is the essence of what's called mass cancellation. So electrogravitic and ET propulsion systems, both the man-made ones, when something is moving in this electromagnetic anti-gravity bubble, the mass of the object itself, like here's this crystal, if it weighs however many ounces, it can be lighter than a feather because the actual, let's call it the atomic weight, the real mass of the object is getting in Earth gravity reduced almost to zero because of the electromagnetic and anti-gravitational field or gravitic field. And I'm not going to get into the physics of it. We understand the physics of it. But when I heard that about the Buga sphere, I said, now we have something very significant because.
Okay. Right in line with where we are, Joe.
Dead on. Offset differentials.
Yes.
That's what it is. Right. So when we're in our ambient environment, we all have that common factor that comes in, that is the relationship, that is gravity, that is the passage of time. And realistically, it's almost impossible to push out that ambient environment under standard normal conditions. It's the same as if you're swimming underwater, right? It's the same as making a void in the water just because you're swimming underwater. It not something typically can happen. Now, we do know that obviously under certain conditions that can be achieved. Even certain animals can achieve that, right? By creating a small cavitation bubble underwater. But, when you're dealing in gas and you're dealing in an ambient environment that's not liquid like that, right? there is such a thing as a diffusion in the buildup. So depending on what your offset differential is the diffusion of the field, and it changes the energy exchange rate, right? So that's the key point, because that energy exchange rate is what I've proposed is the resistance or lack thereof that's deterministic of the gravitic and time and space effects. So by changing the ratio of your relationship with your ambient environment past a certain threshold, but not all the way to the end of the threshold, right, where then you would cross out of the dimension, there would then be a change that would occur locally.
It's not like excuse me, it's just like a submarine in the fact that when you want to go down, you bring in water, and when you want to go up, you let out the water and you have air in there, but air is compressed in there. And when air is compressed, you're localizing all your ions in the air themselves into a central part, and then it becomes lighter than the fluid that it's sitting in, and then it rises. But the same thing happens in gas. We're not doing anything different there. It's telling us the same story. We're compressing the ions in order to make it lighter. Just like he said, it's changing the atomic mass of the actual structure around it. And because the structure is inside that zone that we're talking about right there, then that means that area right there has no weight to it. There's no weight to the center of it. There's weight on the outside in gradient values, but there's no weight to the center. That's why it lifts. That's why my gravity flyer is coming off of the scale. That's the exact procedure I'm using in order to do it. Greer understands it and said the same thing. You understand it. We're saying the same thing. You know what I mean? Physics understands it. I've seen things out there that are this simple, guys. You basically take paper bowls and put it together, and you put the, you know what I mean? Just a little motor on the top, motor on the bottom, and all you're doing is give the ions inside a vector direction by swirling it. That's all that you're doing. And then what happens when you do something like that, it becomes anti-gravitic because there's a Tesla coil putting on the outside field. You're making basically the hairpin circuit out of the Tesla coil by putting the rod down the center of it. So it means it's opposite. So you remember the Tesla coil you can't touch, but the hairpin circuit, once it goes through there, you could touch it just fine. And it goes into water and everything lights up light bulbs, just like the one wire energy from the center of the Tesla coil. What does that mean? It means it's diamagnetic versus your magnetic field. So when they come together, you get a sheath layer. Once they come together in the sheath layer, you get a perfect opportunity for the field bubble. Now you have an opportunity for anti-gravity. That's why Alexa uses what it uses, but you don't necessarily have to use that. If you wanted to go over there and take bismuth, what happens to bismuth when you do it? You take energy, which is the magnetodielectric, and you hit bismuth with it. What happens? You get a field that arises from it right away, very fast, and it blocks out all of the energy from going through it. Why? Because it's diamagnetic. It's creating a sheath layer right then and there, and it's not letting it come through. But that's the key. If you can understand where they are, now you can understand how to put them out there and then how to design the core, because we know the RAV creates a perfect core.
So there's this direct correlation, and this isn't everything that we're talking about. Gravifier, RAV, Buga sphere. Okay, it's an open system to the environment and a closed system in itself. And what that means is that you get your infinity symbol, where you have the environment running through and away from it, and it itself is running in that figure 8, and then it also has a secondary interaction with the environment in that figure 8 pattern. Now, what happens in this regard is interesting, because what you end up with is this relationship between velocity, resonance, and the cyclical action of the oscillation. But it doesn't necessarily have to be just a sphere or an oval, that oscillation, right? In terms of its movement, so to speak, or flow pattern. It could be any which way, as long as it connects back to itself, through a single cycle, through different geometries. So every time you run these rates, right, the faster it ends up going, as long as it's hitting a correct resonant note in relationship to the system that's running it in the first place. It ends up coming into a state of lower resistance, and with that lower resistance becomes higher efficiency. Now, because the same thing that's pushing is also pulling, since it's close to the center, you run into a cascading type of effect, of energy and frequency increase, right? So the faster it goes, the higher its frequency potential, and then the lower the resistance, therefore it's able to meet that higher threshold, only then to work up to a higher threshold yet again. And it works in that same octave type manner, okay, where we've talked about the fields building out on the gravel flyer before, where it'll grow out from the center, but then it reaches a certain point and it seems like it's done and that's just where it's going to be. But that's not actually what's happening. That actually is collapsing back in on itself. It's forming a cycle, and then as that builds in its energy density and its capacitance of that particular zone, it's then able to start to expand out further, only for that to then cycle again. So
I had that in the gravity flyer. Just real quick, I'll tell you, we usually get the energy right off the plate. It came 3 foot off the plate. It did exactly what you just said.
Mm-hmm. And that's the point. So, like, when you start to get the result of, weight reduction, it is inertial mass reduction. It's the same thing. Whether it's electronically modulated through field geometries and field flow patterns, or if it's mechanical in its nature, it's the same exact reason that the gyroscopic precession, experiments work the way that they worked. If you had the two, and that's what the guy did, and I just said all he really needed to do was add a third, and probably would have suited him a lot better, but neither here nor there. Right, but that's the whole entire point. Yeah.
I just want to shout out real quick, Darren. Thank you very much, brother. I appreciate it, man. Right on, my friend. And then I want to shout out Yoni in the chat out there, brother. You made him a moderator. So congrats out there, Yoni, man. Awesome, brother.
Thanks.
So, yeah, we're right in it, Joe. We're right in the thick of this thing as we're doing this stuff, to be honest with you, man. So the gearing system you kept talking about, we were talking about a little earlier, if you take ions and compress them together, the reason you don't get a blast out of it, ions are positive, but what happens is one will turn rogue and go negative on you, right? Which means the spin of it changed inside of it in order to change the explosive expansive of the ions themselves so that it can go back to equilibrium as much as it possibly can. Because you're basically doing a 360-degree Casimir effect on the ions themselves. So what happens is you get a rotation that's different than the other two that are going out. So if your field rotates this way, then the next one rotates this way, then you get another one that's rogue, it's going to go opposite, right? So then you get a locking effect that locks in everything. So think of it this way. If you're talking about the sun, and then we build out the planets, okay? Each one of them has a sheath layer that they're on, which they do. And then you look at Venus, and it's in total opposite rotation. It's because inside the sun itself, there's an ion in there that turned opposite, and it's now creating the planet to go opposite, right? So it builds out just like a planetary system. That was the cool thing about this whole thing, Joe. If we start looking at atoms as ions in the center, instead of protons, neutrons, stuff like that, then we can start to see how it made sense to everything in nature. Because now it builds in the micro scale, it builds in the plasma scale here on the planet, it builds on a planetary scale, and builds on the sun scale the exact same way in a repeating pattern through everything. Mm-hmm. Now it's mechanical gearing, like you said. As soon as one turns opposite, it creates a mechanical gearing system on the inside of the core, which gives the outside a different understanding of where it goes. It's all built on the resonance frequency of each one, and they're in a harmonic of the inside, which means that they're in ratio, which every orbit is in perfect ratio, which is also a combination of what's going on. And you can pretty much tell you exactly where everything's going to build out your entire solar system based on it. And it's proven in all the RAV experiments we do.
Right on. And it's something that we've talked about before. And it reminds me of a line from my song Aethernaut from that I wrote. It was, like when vector paths and patterns meet, it's exactly what it is. And, what's we've talked about before, and I find is directly relevant to what you're saying is when you have two energies that are, in a relationship with each other, right? When they're coming at each other, they generally repel, and then when they come back, then they generally attract. Now, if you imagine this and you see how it builds over time, what you notice is that they go from parallel with each other, and they do the cross. And then once they're in that relationship, see, they fall into a locked circumstance where they're repelling on the one side, but then they're attracting on the other, and then that 45 degrees is their stable point. And now, because they're in this constant cyclical relationship with one another, there's an entanglement between them, and it's an attractive force, right? But it's also a repelling force. That's why it stays in the geometry in which it is. And then the relationship of the two is the creation of the third. And the third spans right in the center of them, and again, that's the representation of sort of an atom, right? And I think that's one of the biggest maybe misunderstandings some people have about it is, you could treat these things as, the strong force, the weak force, all these things as like this big fucking mystery, that's totally unexplainable. But once you just realize that every single thing at all these different scales are following the same exact rules, it becomes very kind of simplistic to understand once you follow the logic, to understand exactly how the things are structured. Because, like I said, if you have the two things coming and they repel, now they're on different trajectories, but they're going to get to a certain point where they're not going toward each other anymore. Now they're going away. And now they begin to attract. Now they start to come in again. And once they start to come in again, well, then they start to repel. Then they go away. Now you have that's your interaction. And that's where all of your helicity comes from in everything. And that is your strong force, because they're both attracted and repelled, and they're stuck in a cycle, okay, of stability, right? They're stable in that form because they can't be pushed away, because they're already being pushed away, and they can't be pulled in because they're already being pulled in. They're both.
Yeah, I think for the people who don't understand this, they got to just watch the RAV start up and see why it's doing what it's doing. For those of you who don't know, they deplete the ions in nuclear warheads because they don't want the thing to go off. Because if you deplete the ions out of it, it has no electrical value to it. Therefore, it has no unwanted triggers in it. So we talk about it, the ions are in the material, and the only way the ions are in the material is if they're in the center of the nucleus of the atom. That's the only way that they build out in there. So you have to really understand what you're looking at here. And then once you know that it's bleeding all the ions out of it, and the ions are what are the resistance in any wire, and the less ions it has, the less resistance it has. That's why you get excited about certain materials. You realize a certain thing that goes on here. When we all talk about negative energy, what we're really talking about is a diamagnetic, okay? And what that really means is the cooler it gets in the center, in the 0 point itself, the less energy it has to expend, the higher the coupling. The higher the coupling that goes on, the more energy it's in there. That's what creates a 360-degree Kashmir effect on the energy itself. That's what gives you the layers that goes outside. Now, is it resonant? Yes, it is, because the layers outside have a harmonic resonance to the core themselves, okay? The frequency in the core is going to be super high. And then on the outside from that, it's going to be much less and much less and much less. but they're bigger, wider, you know what I mean, amount of frequency as you go in there in the harmonic. So it's going to build out in harmonic resonance with each other, and it's all going to be coupled together. So when you have a problem on the outside, you're going to have a problem on the inside. You know what I mean? It's going to work that way. Let me say something so people understand it a different way. I told this to Joe, and I'll just say it out there so we could tie some history in this. If you took Tiamat, and everybody understands it as the planet that should have been there between Mars and Jupiter, right? And instead we got an asteroid belt. Let me give you a different understanding of the way the cuneiform writing goes. Because it said it split and it one side became our moon. That's inconceivable because the moon grew out with the actual planet, and we can prove it, okay? And I'll tell you how a little bit later, but let me just finish this part of it. What Tiamat was is the moon of Mars. If you take all the accumulated mass that goes on in our belt out there, right, on our asteroid belt, and you put it together and you add the two moons of Mars with it, what you're going to find is a moon that would be perfect ratio, just like our moon is to our planet. It would be a perfect ratio moon to the planet of Mars. If that moon itself still had an active core to it, so it's still built out in the plasma core that it should have. What's going to happen is you're going to have a plasma core on the planet, you're going to have a plasma core on the moon, and that little moon Ellis is going to rotate right around the moon of Mars, okay? What happens is if you try to terraform your planet or become a phase one society civilization on your planet by using all the energy on your planet, by putting pyramids around it, taking the ionosphere in there and compressing the gravity on your planet, what happens? It has an immediate reaction to the moon itself. It just destroys the moon, blasts it out. You're going to get a nuclear explosion because of all the ions in there. You're going to come in nuclear, hit one side of the planet, scar the planet. It's going to break in half. You're going to create an asteroid belt, and then you're going to sling everything towards everything else in the rest of the entire solar system, okay? But then when you go to the Earth, you've got the Earth, right? The Earth built out its own moon. It builds out in the little plasma we see in the RAV. We see the little satellite that builds out. It builds out an ionic core. It goes, what do you get? You get plasma dust. Plasma dust held in by the sheath zone. It then becomes obsidian. The obsidian gets together and it holds in a bunch of gases and stuff. Gases and pressure create crystal. What do you see on the moon? You see dust on the moon, and you see crystals that are based on ions. It's ion-based crystal. It builds out with the planet. That's why it's different, but they all do that. What happens when you try to terraform our planet? Because there's pyramids everywhere. It doesn't have the same reaction because inside of the moon itself, it's not active. Therefore, it becomes an anchor, and a negative anchor or a grounding instead of something that's explosive. And then what happens when you turn off the pyramids? You get the deluge. You get basically water coming up from the ground itself because you compress the water table down into the rock. Now it's coming up. Everything makes perfect sense based on that same gearing system we talked about. If those things are true, that means that this way this builds out. And what does it do to the cuneiform writing? It basically takes the cuneiform writing and makes a warning symbol to the rest of us. If you're smart enough to figure this out, then it becomes a warning sign. If you want to make a type 1 civilization and use all the power of your planet, do not do what Mars did because it's self-destructed.
Well, that was a hell of a tangent.
It's a hard understanding. You got to do a lot of work to get there.
It all plays a role in the old stuff that we've discussed before and how it goes. It's pretty awesome. There was one thing in the chat I wanted to address. Jedi Knight, it says power doesn't come into anything as an electron. It's made of sound. Everything moves that's created through sound, vibrational sound. That's it. Won't get there until you understand that. Well, you see, we know that. We know that, but there's a couple things about sound and the practicality of the discussion, right? Because if you break it down to its simplest form and you start there, there's not enough pieces, okay, in order to be able to engineer it and describe it, because sound dimensionally is it's actually in a lower dimension, so and a higher dimension at the same time. It's interesting because it's
Okay.
both the highest dimension of energy and the lowest dimension of matter. Okay, that's my opinion on it, my take on it. We went over that chart thing that I made right when we first started talking and all that, and how it starts off with just some kind of waveform, and once there's one, it's the interaction of the waveform through its vectoring that ends up breaking off into other things that have a real properties for use and purposes of describing it. So it's a building block.
So hold on. Let me just throw it out there, Joe. Ultrasound to mercury creates an unstable gold. Gold 177. You need 178 to make it stable. Okay. So what's going on is ultrasound is going over there and messing with the ions themselves inside of the mercury because it's liquid. Gaseous states of ions are able to transform things. That's the Russell scale. If you look at the Russell scale in positive and negative, what you're actually finding out is that if you mess with the ions on the inside, it'll change the outside, because it'll put out the sheath zones, which put out the little balls that go out there, the satellites, and then they'll create another one, which everybody says is the electron, which is not. It's an ion spherical structure out there that goes on, but that's what the Russell scale was intended to tell you right there, is that you can build out and transmutate things just by using ultrasound to do it, as long as they're in the correct state, which makes perfect sense if they're in a gaseous state, right? So all of this makes all the kinds of perfect sense. And yes, sound plays a role, but it's in ultrasound, not necessarily in regular sound, because you're compressing it. It's changing the sound and vibration of what's going on. Vibration is in resonance, okay?
Right.
Sound is in ultrasound. You know what I mean? But it all makes sense on the Russell scale.
Well, and everything that we've been talking about just comes back down to that interaction from what Nathan was saying about how the planets form out and plasma interactions, how we were talking about the fields crossing and the creation of the third vector and the higher complexity of the field geometries. It all boils back down to what he was saying about the explosion and an implosion, which therefore is cavitation. So that's exactly what it is. And when you look at an implosion explosion event, you could then backtrack that all the way back to a sine wave, because it's cyclical and it's exploding and then it's imploding and then it's exploding and it's imploding and then it's exploding and it's imploding. You get it? It's all the same. It just repeats itself over and over and over and over and over again. And then when you get on the macroscopic scale, it seems to subside, but it really kind of doesn't, because you could invite it back in with high enough densities and differentials. So, we don't experience it firsthand, but if you zoom way out and you look at space from afar, right, you'll see it on the larger scale, at the largest scales, and you'll see it at the smallest scales. It's just because we fall in between in this stability zone where there's matter that exists, there's energy that exists, there's the interaction and energy exchange between energy and matter, and then there's the capturing of energy by matter. So we don't perceive it, because this is where this is the dimensional space where everything falls into not a state of equilibrium, don't be clear, but a state of stability. When you push the limits of these stabilities and you start crossing these threshold barriers of the ratios of the energy and the matter, you start to see it. And I mean, you said an atomic bomb before, right? Yeah, there's a great example of it, isn't it? And you see it sucks in and blows out, right? That's exactly what it does. It sucks in and it blows out.
Yeah. I think when people need to understand this a little better, certain things in physics are there because they're mathematically possible. not because they're true. So if you want to say, okay, we got quarks, right, in atoms, is what they say. You have a quark, you have a gluon or a gluton, whatever the hell they want to call it, okay? They don't exist. They're a mathematical equivalent. So what's going on here? We're seeing in every other scale they're ions. In every scale, except for that scale. So what's the difference? It's the amount of energy versus the environmental condition and the size of it. We give you, for instance, when we get bigger, you get a lot of radiation and higher voltages, right? You get to lower voltages, there's not as much radiation, but something else takes over, right? It gives you the appearance that something's different. But is the energy different? No. The energy is the same from the smallest scale to the biggest scale. All we're doing is learning every time it changes in the scale, they give it a different name. But is the energy all the same? Yeah, it is. So when you get down to that scale, are there such thing as quarks? No. Is there glutens? No. Those things don't exist. They're mathematical equivalents. But if you put an ion in there and you do it as a simple engine and you look at it like this rotates this way and this rotates this way and it becomes basically a gearing system, then everything works out exactly like it does on the small scales, the big scale.
Yeah.
When you say you look at an atom, have you ever seen the inside of an atom? No, we haven't. There's a shell there and we can't see it. And no matter...
They say we have.
Yeah,
They keep on shooting things into each other, you know.
Yeah, let's shoot things into each other. Let's shoot it on a piece of gold. Yeah, dude, that's not going to show you the inside of it. Come on.
Look. I mean, this is what it comes down to. If you take my deconstructive interference of the sine wave theory into account, what you quickly notice is that you birth particles, okay, off of that. However you want to think about it, whatever you want to name it. And how the particles are deterministic, okay, is interesting because it has to do with the amplitude, okay, of the two waveforms that are going to interfere, where they interfere, and their angle of interference. Okay, now all of those factors, okay, come into play in the deconstructive interference as to what you're going to yield out the other side. Because if you shear a sine wave, like let's just say head on, right, like this, and you shear that sine wave, and the node, okay, is 3/4 the way up on the other one. So you know if they're the same amplitude, right, you're going to get deconstructive interference, and you're going to have a remainder. And well, when you shear off all that bottom, what's left is this top, okay, and the top will tumble, okay, in that direction, and on the bottom it'll tumble in that direction, okay. Do you see? Now
I'm trying to follow.
Now you have two things the same size, okay, that are spinning opposite of one another, the same size, and they were born of the same two-wave interference, which means that you have two entangled particles, you know, and one spinning this way and one spinning that way, right? Sound like something positive and negative, or, you know, an electron and a you know, proton. Sound like something, right? And we have these things all around. And then depending on how you shear these things, okay, you're real small and at a weird angle, all of a sudden it's like, whoa, that's a new particle. We've never seen one of these before. What's incredible is that these sine wave interference patterns, they go on and on and on, right? And every single time these intersections occur, they're basically blowing out and birthing all of these particles.
Well,
it occurs.
Okay. When you have anything, it builds out in, how do I say it? It builds out in a particle if it's out in space. It's got a 360-degree compression on it. It builds out in the zones like we talked about. But they're always there. That's the thing. That's the thing that gets me and people don't understand. They're always there. So when you say the sun puts them out, that means that they're always there from it. And so when you get more energy coming out of the sun, it hits those zones and it makes the photon, right? Because what is a photon? It's a higher state of energy, right? But then the sheath zones are the higher state of energy. So when it hits it, it brings it up even further so you can see it. So if you're in UV and that's your energy pattern going out, and you know that sheath zone's right there, what happens? All the sheath zones become very evident that they're there, you know what I mean? Because they light up with light. That's as simple as it gets, but that's throughout the entire solar system. So when they put things in a vacuum, it's like a cosmic joke. It's like they don't understand what's going on. When you're sucking out the vacuum, you're sucking out the energy. You're not creating it correctly. When you do it in plasma, it's self-sustaining, so it makes its own vacuum, right? But if I were just go over and suck the vacuum out, I'm sucking the energy out because I'm sucking out all the air. There's no energy there. They think, oh, that's space. But no, space has energy. It's hidden by the light spectrum it's in. That's pretty much what's going on there. And they're not seeing that. So every time that they go to do this, it's like kicking themselves right in the foot. It's, why are you doing this? It doesn't make any sense. And as soon as you see all the plasma that comes out of it, it tells you you're in the wrong direction right away, because there's nothing in the solar system that has plasma that looks like that. Okay? Nothing. The only way that you get that is if you get a higher excitation of the sun itself in a particular situation that goes through in the solar system that would show you that up in there. You get northern lights, you get other things like that that would show the plasma layers. You're not getting that in daily life. There's nothing out there that looks like that. As soon as, because you saw the plasma in a vacuum chamber, it just bursts out like it's everywhere. Our moon doesn't do that. It looks like a spherical structure out there, right? There's no plasma layer that bursts out like that. It's incredible the things that they think are associated with each other when they're doing it all wrong. If you want to take something that's in static electricity and make it stronger, take something like paper. Paper has a cross section that goes like this. What happens? The static electricity goes around it, takes the gas inside, compresses the gas inside, and makes it lighter. And what it'll do is it'll make it heavier on a scale too. You can actually push it in one direction and get force out of it. I've done all the experiments. I've seen it happen. They don't think about that.
Talk about this for you bring up the aurora. I think this is a good point. I want to talk about a whole nother not commonly understood phenomenon, right? Well, if you have all this energy coming off the sun and it's in relationship to our magnetic fields, right? You know that it's hitting that barrier at the front and kind of pushing around, right? But the density is still in a diffuse state where it's most concentrated at the from closest to the points of interaction. And just because the magnetic field is there doesn't push out all of that energy. Obviously, it's in a diffuse state still. Well, if you realize, like we've talked about so many times, right? The whole entire point is for energy to bring matter into a high state of excitation. And in order for it to most effectively bring it into a high state of excitation to create plasma and accumulations of highly charged matter, material particles, the density, the material density matters significantly, right? So as you go to our poles, where you have and our most diffuse zone of our atmosphere, right, where there's still matter kind of diffuse wafting off more or less, it comes into interaction with that energy, right? Even though the energy density level might not be all that high, it doesn't need to be, because the diffusion is the matter diffusion is very high, so the density is very low. So it does not take a lot of energy under those set of conditions to then cause excitation of the matter up in those zones. That's why you end up with it. Then you get the solar flare, the energy level goes up, then the aurora is able to actually come down further from the poles because the energy level is capable of reaching a higher state of excitation away from the poles where the diffusion is less and the density is higher. Okay, because the material density is least diffuse and highest in density level material wise of the atmosphere at the equator. That, you know, it squashes, right? Everything squashes as it spins around. It does its thing, so everything gets pushed out to the center, centrifugally.
That's why everything looks like it's on a plane, Joe. You know what I mean? Throughout the entire solar system, that's why it looks like a plane. Because you got the two twists that goes on like in our Earth and stuff, and then it builds out to the center plane, but it does it on Saturn and everything like that. And then when you see Saturn's geometry at the very top of it, it's matching the core that's on the inside. You know what I mean? That's directly relationship to the plasma that's going on in the core of the inside. I just want to give a couple shout outs real quick. I gave out 5 Old Men Builds memberships. Vortex hooked us up, man. $2 sticker. Thank you very much.
Right on,
He's out there, man. He's got us 10. He's out there, members for 10 months, man. Right on, brother. He's also a moderator on the show now. So, yeah, we're seeing these effects directly in that RAV. And people ask me all the time, why is it so important? You know what I mean? Well, it's because it's telling you all the answers. Like you didn't even ask the question yet, and it's giving you the answers. You see the black out there, and you see it perfectly formed inside the energy. You knew it was just in a different light spectrum, but the energy built out the same way as the high voltage did. You saw it right away. Okay, it shows you the inside of it. You knew exactly what the core looked like. Let me give another piece of history out there. The dodecahedron. If you guys haven't seen it, it's basically that geometry structure from the Greek culture where the little dots are on the outside, little balls. Let me take this to a different level for you. Go in your CAD program, put it in there. Now, separate the little balls. What you're going to get is you're going to get a geometrical structure that goes on that looks just like the inside of the RAV. Take all the circles down and put them from each side and align them over top of each other. You're going to build out every single sheath zone that the RAV itself builds out. You have just built out the understanding of what gravity is, what anti-gravity is, what actually the universe is. It is a complete and utter understanding in science, okay? That's what it is. It's not some knitting tool. It's not some things you throw candles in the center. It's an understanding of science of what you're dealing with. Anti-gravity is creating gravity in your craft. It's a gravity well. It builds out the same thing as the core of the planet. That's why they work together, okay? Anti-gravitational just means you're changing the mass of the atom, okay? So it's perfectly understood.
I'm sorry, but because it's super relevant right now.
Go ahead.
Okay. What you just said, right? So when you're spinning something, okay, I want you to think the gravitron. Think about the gravitron, like the carnival ride, right?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, that thing's spinning like a centrifuge. All right. So you have all this centrifugal force that's occurring, right? And everything is getting pushed out from the center. Okay. But what if you propose that you keep on spinning that son of a bitch? Okay. Well, what do we say about the situation earlier where it builds out, and then it seems like it's stalled. Like that's the furthest of its reach that it could make. Okay. But then it ultimately kind of collapses and then pops back out. So the whole point is at what point do you spin the thing and you're stuck to the wall, but then all of a sudden you're released from the wall, right? And that is kind of the interesting thought about it.
Okay, so this is why it does it. Because when you spin an electret, it builds out a magnetic field, okay? But that magnetic field is always trying to go back in. The planet itself is not perfectly round. It goes in different shapes, and we know that because of the tidal force. So what you're dealing is within string theory itself for now. Now you're getting into why I draw that little wave around everything, because that's the exact force that's going in. It's the AC oscillation wave. You are creating the slush, okay? That slosh right in there, right? But that's the most important part, because now you know if the thing's pushing out and pulling in at the same time, what does it make the zone we're in now? We're in the zone of equilibrium. That's why we're not noticing the rotational force of the actual planet itself. You see, It's perfectly simple on how it works out. It's a fundamental part of why this works the way it does. Every sheath zone is magnetic and diamagnetic. And if you can understand that, one pulls in, one pushes out. It does it in an equilibrium. And as soon as it meets the equilibrium, is we get what we have here today and what we're sitting in. Okay. We're in the equilibrium zone. That's why we feel no rotation. That's as simple as it gets. We know how to create gravity. We know how to create anti-gravity. It's all in the same thing. So when we put this out, guys, we'll just put out a theory on the entire thing and correct all of physics. I don't think people understand this. Because we're dealing with resonance, we have string theory. As soon as we start dealing with the energy that's inside this, we have the electrical universe. As soon as we get into what the atom's building out, we get into classical physics, okay? There is, and then we're dealing with the micro part of it, so you get into that side as well. Guys, there's no part that this doesn't cover in a complete theory of everything. It's all in the same thing. All you had to do is realize what it was. And then throughout history, they say the same thing over and over and over again. They're telling you the same answers that we're giving you now. As soon as you create that diamagnetic, man, plants grow faster, they grow better. As soon as you get the ions into the earth, you get telluric current that goes onto the ground, which actually makes the seasons work, that actually builds out all the plants even faster. If you have a pyramid that has a bunch of that going in the ground, you build up a heavy telluric current. It takes a sandy area and makes it a paradise. So, guys, it's a full understanding of everything. Everything gets incorporated into it. You no longer have a mystery of what's going on. We just have a way forward now. We now have a theory that covers absolutely everything. And then all those mathematical anomalies, once you put it in the correct form, those will straighten out and start becoming the correct thing, because they'll be able to change the math of things that they didn't realize were there. Now they're able to put them in, math corrects itself. You go over to the mathematician and you say, why did you take the fraction and turn it upside down on the other side of the equal sign? He said, well, because it has to balance out. Well, now I'm giving you a reason for it, but instead of it being the exact same fraction, I'm giving you a formula to put in that place of that in order to make that fraction, in order to fix it. But that's exactly how science works. So, yeah, we totally changed the way we understand things. We're no longer looking at the big G from the outside. We're looking at it from the atomic level. We're building it straight out, okay? That's why I said Jack Staffardi doesn't have it when he talked about anti-gravity, because his thing's the big G. He's not saying this all equals the big G. He's saying that he has all this stuff going on and the big G is part of his equation. Well, that part's wrong. You're building gravity in a gravity well. That's exactly what you're doing. And if you didn't understand that, you misunderstood the entire thing. Why do I work on the gravity flyer? Let me just answer this out. Joe calls it a big piece of crap. It's because
That's not true. I make fun of
oh, come on now. We all know how you feel. Okay.
What about a good thing in a bad way? I mean, what can I tell you?
Let me just put it this way. What it teaches you is a multi-level system. If you do not collect the levels of the system together to understand the bigger picture, you miss the entire thing. If you're all just about the high voltage, you miss it. If you're all just about the Tesla coil, you miss it. If you're just about the rotational speeds of the disk, you miss it. If you're just about the harmonic that goes on it and you don't understand the voltage correctly, you miss it. There's a lot of things that make it a multi-layered system. It's why it's the perfect example of the piece of crap that shouldn't do what it's doing, but does it because the 100% correct principles of layered physics are inside of it. That's why it works. That's why it's defying the odds. Because that stupidest part of it that you hate makes it the part that makes it great. Instead of just building out a sphere and making it easy on all of us, right? I built out a piece of shit with 3 plates on it that nobody understands. Okay. That's what is going on. And it's because it's so complicated in the way each interaction works with each other. But then again, so is the earth and everything else. So why not put yourself to the test and do it?
Right on. I don't disagree. Do it. Yeah, no, you're doing a great job with it, man. I mean, the test that you showed was quite impressive, and I know that there's more to it, as you've been saying, and that's something that you'll be showing sooner than later. And I think that, realistically, okay, so here becomes the question then.
Okay, go ahead.
If the configuration is like 9 pounds or something like that, like you're saying, with the wood, right?
Yeah.
And you have 6 pounds of weight loss or 7 pounds of weight loss.
The wood's 2 pounds. So
Well, no,
yeah.
no, I'm saying like with the, more sophisticated test, hypothetically, right?
Okay.
All right. How much more difficult is that last 2 or 3 pounds? Is it exponentially more difficult? You know what I mean? Like, as far as achieving it, like, does it go up? Like, do the requirements of like frequency, for instance, go up exponentially at
Yeah.
that point before it breaks, or is it linear? That's
It,
sort of my question.
it sees the wood as part of the mass of the craft. You would think because it's outside of the zone that it'd be harder to lift,
No,
right?
it's part of the mass of the craft because it's part.
Yeah. So that's the thing. When it gets to 0 on the scale and it wants to go further, my thought on it, okay, my idea is I think it's going to start lifting off. That's what I'm thinking is going to happen. So if I'm right, then we got a good test, right? If it doesn't lift off and it gets way past that point and it's all perfect, then the whole thing was a failure. The complete another thing was a complete failure. If it does not show signs of lift at that point, it's a failure.
Right.
You know what I mean? That's the test. It's got to get to 0, and then at that point, it better show the certain takeoff. That's that point you're looking for. That's that hard line right there.
Right. I guess my kind of curiosity wasn't so much about that. It was more, does it take like much more like like density levels and frequency rates and things like that, the exponentially more to get to that 0, to get to that threshold. That was the question. So if you might be able to get it 90% of the way or whatever, like within fair reason, but to get from 10 to 20% is easy, and 20 to 30% is a little bit more hard, and 30 to 40% a little harder than that. Do you see what I mean? It grows up in orders of magnitude. So what I'm kind of curious about is pressing out the last 20% or 10%. Is this going up in orders of magnitude as far as what the inputs have to be, to get it to where it is,
To tune it, the
Right.
input of energy never changes. It's the frequency that I'm playing with. So,
Well, it is but that's what I'm talking about, because
yeah,
because when you're dealing with magnitude, though, the frequencies go off the frequency requirements go off the chart.
well,
Quick.
let me say it in a different way. Okay, the frequency is the frequency, but in order to align this properly, I'll say this: I put it in alignment, right? In perfect mathematical sense, it turns on, and then it goes like this, Joe. Instead of it being in a straight line, it starts to shift because the components working together have a different energy that goes through them. It's like a number 1 and number 2 coil, right? If they're perfect to each other, the number stays the same for the whole coil.
Mhm.
If they're not, then it'll readjust the coil itself to a different number.
Right.
That's what I'm dealing with, but I'm dealing with 5 different numbers here. So it's like a lock. I got to be able to put it in each one of them to compensate for the last one that went wrong, right? So what happens is you start overshooting things in the wrong way, okay? You put a different capacitor in here, it changes the value here, right? Another one over here changes the value here. Maybe it's way off. That's the problem I'm dealing with. So when I say I'm aligning them, that's what I have to do, because you can't just go, okay, I know the frequency here, 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 because I've tried it. Then as soon as you turn them on, they misalign. And then you go back and you have to realign them. And there's not always a way to quickly realign them. Like the capacitor bank is great for changing them a little bit, but sometimes you don't have the right capacitance right, the level right? What I'm trying to do is the amount of energy is solely dependent on where that beat frequency is.
Mhm.
If those do not line up, the power level's not enough, because it's not about how much you put in. That's brute force. It's about the coupling that goes on between the layers.
Oh, absolutely. It's definitely about the coupling. I mean, I agree with you there. 100%.
So if they're not coupled properly, you're not getting anything. You're not getting that beat frequency. The beat frequency, you have to say it like this. If I have a ×2 button on my desk, every time that I hit the correct beat frequency, I hit a ×2. Okay. So for every one that's aligned, I keep hitting ×2, ×2, ×2, ×2. That means my energy level goes up, but it's all held together in that coupling. And if I did it the other way with the energy, it would just blast out everywhere. It wouldn't do anything because it's way past the point of where the energy can be contained inside of it. Okay, it's just like the one-wire energy. Once you get past a certain threshold on that, it becomes hot energy. You got to keep it to the cold way. So it has to align properly. That's the biggest problem I have with this thing. So when you get a good alignment, that's why I write down all the numbers and everything and which capacitors were checked and all that in my notebook. As soon as you get one, like I get a much better reading off of the new craft than I do the old one. Okay. So the numbers are shooting way better. So the amount of mass that it drops is more. You know what I mean? It has a better ratio to it. In the old one, you know what I mean? Not so much because it's wobbly. So, I mean, take it for what you will. That's what we're aligning here, and that's what's going on. That's why it's so hard to get. But once I do get it figured out, you know what I mean? A computer program is much easier. You put it in there, and it shows where it is, shows which value to change again, and it's like aligning it for you as you go. You know what I mean? And pretty soon you'll be able to put a mathematical formula in there, and you won't have to do anything. It's just boop,
Right.
we're done. Yeah.
Well, I mean, but once you know what it is, I mean, then it's just rinse and repeat at that point. You just apply it across the board. Yeah, and you can apply it to any which way thing you're doing, which is what's cool. Because realistically, whatever it's going to take to break that threshold is going to be the same across the board. I mean, but and propose something weird about Rav. Rav may very well break that threshold, except because of what it is. You can't be inside that field. That might be the problem.
Well, this goes into an understanding, Joe, of bismuth, aluminum, bismuth. And I sent you guys a paper on it, on how I worked it out. That simple understanding is the inside of it becomes a Faraday cage. Then the bismuth is the outside layer. Okay, as it's hit with energy, you'd put a Tesla coil in the center, you build it out like a UFO structure, put a hollow core in the center. It then builds out the correct way. It gives you your diamagnetic and your magnetic, so it creates a perfect sheath layer on the outside, right?
Yeah,
But on the inside,
it's doing the thing. It's pushing. It's pushing it out and pulling it in. Did I say that right? Pushing it, pulling it. Yeah, pushing it out and pulling it in at the same time. So things at that point would be forced to fall into that same lock state that we discussed before.
yes,
And that's the deal with it.
build the core in the center the correct way and the correct geometry. Now you're still compressing ions because you're taking the air themselves and compressing it at the point that it turns into it, right? Not only that, couple that, because the inside of it's a Tesla coil, basically like this, it's doing it for you on the inside already. It's already giving you the compression in there. You're compressing even further by the amount of coupling you're getting. And you got to understand, it's like the stealth craft. When they put the energy on the outside, it cuts through the air better. This thing will cut it through, and it'll go through Mach without a sonic boom because it's no longer forcing against the air pressure. It's slicing right through it.
Oh, right. There's no air pressure for it to have to go through. And at that point, there's no need for propulsion, like I keep on saying at that point, because the environment becomes your means of propulsion, not the other way around. Your environment's pushing against you and your field. It's not, you pushing against your environment. It's shooting the pea out of the pod instead of relying on anything else. And I mean, I firmly believe that, and that's just a matter of field geometry manipulation to do that. If you create a bias to the center of mass, you have your own gravity zone, like anything else that changes the geometry of the field, then that ultimately changes the relationship with the loose coupling of the environment, the secondary coupling, and then all of a sudden now you have the pressure, and geometric gradient differential, right? So you know where it's pinching is gonna, it's gonna go opposite that. This is basic physics. So
So I just mentioned to Jarvis, aluminum is not diamagnetic. It's the bismuth that's diamagnetic. So just so you understand, the aluminum works on regular magnetics.
right. Well, it's got dielectric properties, but not diamagnetic properties.
Yeah. Well, the thing about aluminum is it keeps the energy on the outside of the metal. It doesn't try to let it permeate it and change your ions. That's why it's so perfect.
Yeah, dielectric, not diamagnetic.
No. Right, but the bismuth is diamagnetic.
The bismuth is definitely diamagnetic. It's the most diamagnetic.
That's what I'm trying to say. Bismuth is the diamagnetic. The outside of aluminum is paramagnetic, but that's why it pushes the energy off of the outside and then layering in fields from it.
You get a pump. The internal geometries are pumping and they're under expansion and compression, and it leads to that pressure. It needs to go somewhere. It does the opposite on the outside of the craft than it does. So it instead of being immediately pushed off, it clings and then it pushes off the environment. The environment's then what gets pushed off. I don't know. That's kind of how it works. I've been a believer in what you've been saying with it for a long time, but then that raises the question that'll make you hate me, which is, so why are you fucking around with trying to figure out all these other variables without putting a damn shell on the thing? It's like I have this answer of all these things that clearly would give me exactly what you need, and I'm going to sit there and I'm going to preach it, talk about it, and then you know what I'm going to do? Build something that doesn't utilize it. To me, it's sort of like, come on.
Joe, you're right. That would be the perfect answer, but this guy did it without it. Okay. I like to reverse engineer things. Okay. I just want a little lift. Give me an inch. You know what I mean? Just give me an inch off the ground, and then I'll put a shell on it and we'll raise to the heavens. You know what I mean? That's what I'm looking for. I just want to prove out his theory. Did he do it? You know what I mean? Because I get tired of all these little fuckers with strings. Okay. Oh, it's a string. It's a string. Oh, there's a post in the ground. Oh my God, he got big wires coming from the side. Look, dude, I just want to stick and put my balls right in their face and say, "Eat up, pal," because I'm tired of hearing it. Okay, I've heard it for years, and I just get sick of it. It's like, dude, I don't blame you. I'm just going to do it just to piss you off.
Listen, I don't blame you whatsoever. We come from we're very similar in many ways, but our personalities when it comes to certain other things are like a lot different. Me is like, I couldn't give a fuck how that guy did it. Like, I'll take fucking the ideas that I agreed with and, utilize those concepts and then come up with my own shit or someone else's shit or whatever it is that works or that I think is going to work. And that's the route I would go when, and I don't disagree. It's cool to reverse engineer things. And I'm not saying that his did or didn't work. And I'm certainly not saying that yours won't, even if his never did, that doesn't mean yours won't. Right. To me, though, it's sort of like, but you have all these better ideas that would make it work. And what does it matter whether or not his ever worked? Isn't it like whether or not yours does? I don't know. That's just like my mentality. Like I would tackle it. I would try to rebuild it. I would push it and try like you. And then I would reach a certain point where I look at it and I'm like, I could see where this thing is lacking. And I have these ideas to overcome that. That's what I'm going to do. And then that's where we deviate,
Well, it comes down to this, Joe. If we get a 0 on the scale and I still can't get it to lift, I'll have to build a new one the right way. Okay. That's just so I can finish out the project and say we're done with it, right?
Yeah, man.
But that doesn't mean I'm not going to sit there in the back room someday and start fiddling with this thing the way it is and try to get it past that little point. Okay. it's something
That
that's
personality difference. I'd be like, yo, that guy, fuck that guy. He like that shit
It's
just
like-
didn't work. I got it to work, not him. As far as I'm concerned, he told everybody how to do it. Then he got on and told them some more and told them some more, and nobody else could do it. Did he do it or not? What does it matter? But I did. You know, whatever.
No, I perfectly understand your point of view. Look, a lot of people would have already saw, okay, if you understand how anti-gravity works, just build the right thing and be done with it. But it's not that easy for me. You've seen all my replications, Joe. I like to do things perfect. I like them real clean. I like them where I can teach people about them. I don't want a big failure sitting right there.
All right.
You know what I mean? Especially when I know it's so close. If it wasn't showing any promise on the scale, it'd be different. It'd be like, oh, well, you know what I mean? We really don't have anything here. And I think that's the
let me
biggest
ask
thing.
you, what is the Buga sphere doing? Okay, that Gravifly is doing. We talked about it already a little bit, but we know what the pieces of the Gravifly are. What do you think the pieces are in the Buga sphere as far as what we're missing? Like, what don't they know? If they, because they admit they haven't taken a core sample, they don't know exactly what's in the thing. What do you think's going on in there?
They're creating a DC battery that flips to AC battery, and they're not realizing that it does it. And it's what's giving it its ability to lift.
So you're saying that there's chemical component inside that's a standard battery, more or less, that they're allowing that to leach into a conductor. They're applying a form of controlled resistance. That controlled resistance is kind of repeating over itself, compressing it into a waveform, and then it's cycling back.
Yeah. It's because of the
capacity, because it's a conductor and it's got mass, and the mass is separated. Then you have capacitance. So, you know, and it's leaky, right? Because it's also open to both the battery and so you have a leaky capacitor going from DC to AC. And you think that's what's going on?
not necessarily. It's the materials that they chose. It's that, sorry for me, I can't think of the name, CIR, that one, I forget the name of it. That material right there, huh?
CIR. Okay.
I think it's CR on the, CR, I think on the table, or CU.
Like chromium?
No, it's something different. That's, I think, CH. Anyway, what it is it's putting off a bounce back field. And what that bounce back field is a slush. They're not realizing how that battery's built. If you ask Mike to build it, they'd probably tell you, find it, because it'd be self-running. It would recharge because it goes into AC, but that's the trigger point. See, not a lot of people realize that. They've never done Edwin Gray experiment. They don't understand it. If you take high voltage fields, right, and they coupled capacitance, because two waves coming together don't cancel each other out. They couple the capacitance between them on the B field, right, on the magnetic field. So that's what happens when you put two waves to each other. They couple the capacitance. So basically, when you switch that into AC, it gives you a volume of energy that instantly switches into an AC field, which gives you a spike in your magnetic field, right? But that's what the Buga sphere has to do in order to create this energy. It must have DC volume of energy, and it must have AC slosh in it in order to get that spike instantly, okay? When you understand that, then you understand why it's working. You're looking for that AC spike because you need that string theory to work. You need the little string to go around there and go in and out, in and out, in and out, just like a sine wave, okay? But the DC is a volume of energy. It's a capacitance, okay? It just goes out there. As soon as you flip it, boom, automatically, immediate strength, okay? It's why Edwin Gray was able to run the motor, because he's basically hitting it at the top of the motor, right where the field needs to hit on the pole, and boom, he drives it, right? And then it turns off. And then he drives it again. So what happens to the battery is it's not pulling amps out of the battery. It's pulling volts out of the battery, which means all it's seeing is two ZVSs versus a massive amp draw. That's a completely different understanding of making it an over unity experiment right there, past the 99.9% threshold, which means that's why the Buga sphere would work if they understood the component. It's so hard to explain that one.
So here's a better question. Great, you have a flying ball. Why?
Who the fuck knows? Who knows? To prove it's done? I mean,
because guess what? You can talk about what it is or what they think it does all you want. But, you know, what it does and why it does it is a whole nother thing. Like, what would, like, is it a fucking toy? Is it like, oh, look, I can fly this ball around because, look, I'm flying a ball around? What's the point of having a flying ball?
okay, so I'll answer it real quick for you. From everything we've said, it explains gravity. No, if you understand the science, it explains gravity. So just understand how profound that is.
Okay, great. It explains gravity. Nathan, peace, love, and all things equal, man. Nobody gives a shit. Because if you have the ability to create something that defeats gravity, okay, or overcomes gravity, okay, why do you care to create a device that explains gravity? Who gives a shit? You know, why do you need to explain what it's showing?
For the same reason we talked about earlier. If everything on the macro and micro scale gets up to the world scale is exactly the same, and you know that anti-gravity is just gravity, then you understand the complete understanding of what you're looking at. You know how the universe works because you know how gravity works. If you can understand it in that way, it's a straight line to understanding technology in the entire universe. You have a perfect understanding of how to get your civilization to any level you want to. It takes a great amount of understanding and science to do it. But if you understood that the energy doesn't change and what gravity was, and the anti-gravity is just gravity in the skies, then you understood the same thing as that's how planets build out, that's how the solar system builds out. That's why I see no distinction in any of them, Joe, because I know it's all the same thing. That means that if that thing's right and it's done right and it starts flying, we have a whole new world the next day.
Yeah, guy in chat saying it's covered in fiber optics. Fiber optics can be used for any sensor. Don't disagree with that. Didn't know it was covered in fiber optics. I mean, let me propose a little alternate situation here. Okay. So what if, okay, it's a three-dimensional vessel for, you know, more or less like an energy form of life, you know, like if you have something that's out of dimensional phase, you know, it's a carrier between, you know, an upper dimensional, the plasmatic state and 3 dimensions. So, you know, it could be like a sentience that kind of inhabits it, so to speak, right?
It's like disappearing, right? Is that what you're saying? It disappears. It goes into a different.
Right. It acts as an intermedium. You know, so if you have, you know, an upper dimensional or an other dimensional, you know, sentience, right? Whether it be a physical being or an etheric being, let's just say, right? They might have a hard time crossing over the Planck threshold, you know, to either change phase or to come down dimensionally, right? If you're an etheric body and you come down dimensionally, you're not miraculously matter, right? That's why we have bodies, right? So our etheric self could inhabit this dimension, you know, through a carrier. What if it's just something like that? Like, what if it's an etheric carrier? That's what I'm supposing.
That could be. Well, if it had fiber optics in it, means it and they went to the outside, that means it's using light as its energy source to refill the batteries. Maybe that's what gets it over the threshold. I think the fact that everybody says things disappear, it basically goes into the UV spectrum. Now, this is why they start talking about, I believe it's blue glass, and blue glass gives away the spectrum. Have you ever come in from outside and you're just drowned with light, right? It's so bright outside, and you come inside, you can't hardly see nothing. And you look at your hands, around them there's a purple glow. I
Yeah.
don't know if you ever noticed that or not, but it is. You're actually around your hands is a purple glow. But you know you see the same thing when you take something that's glow in the dark and you take black light to it. It'll do the same thing. It'll glow purple, right? You see my Rodin coil does it. Okay, it's the same effect. So what that is telling you about the UV spectrum that's going on around it. I think that that's what it's doing. It's not disappearing that it's not there. It's going beyond the UV spectrum. It's going on the other side of it. You know what I mean? The other side of that energy. Now, could that be a different dimension? It could be. We don't know yet. You know what I mean? We haven't had something disappear and we whacked a stick at the air. You know what I mean?
Right.
So we don't know completely, but I think that's exactly what it would do. If it did that, that means that the stories about Bigfoot, did he just go into the UV spectrum and all of his prints are no longer there and he's still walking? Is he walking in a different plane of existence than what we are? That's the most fascinating part about it, because it's not completely out of the realm of physics to say that.
Interesting. Someone's saying that they drilled into the Buga yesterday. I was trying to see if I could find a video on it.
I looked at it, and there's one guy on my Gravity Flyer channel that keeps showing something, but that's not the thing I've seen. If there's a Tesla coil, then the game's over, dude. I've already have the answer. I mean, you know me, Joe. I got a whole, thing next to me of display cabinets of my Tesla coils here, man. I know all about them. So if that's what it is, we already have the answer.
Yeah, pretty much. I mean, there's nothing better to couple with than Coil. I mean, that's exactly what coils kind of do, other than revector energy, of course, but still.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know. I'm gonna have to try to find that on my own time. Maybe that's something we can expand on at some point. But I don't know. I'm seeing stuff come up, but I don't know what's legit or what's recent.
Yeah. I'm gonna just put my email in the chat real quick.
Yeah, because that's the one thing about the Buga is like, because I guess it's a hot topic with people. There's a lot of people that just like spew bullshit about it and capitalize on it.
There you go. So send it to my email. Yeah, well, it's a hot topic. I just wish people understood the physics behind it. In physics, they use so many words to describe the same thing. Like, remember we had the argument about the electron, Joe? And I went and looked up the electron experiment. Do you know what it is? Have you ever seen the electron experiment?
Describe it.
So they take a vacuum tube and they create this plasma that goes like this, right? It goes straight across. And then what it does, it just goes to the negative side. So they say all electrons are negative, right? There's no balls. There's no balls of energy. There's no spheres, nothing. It's plasma that goes like this. So when we show Sean's experiments and we see it coming down like this and it's swirling, well, yeah, that makes perfect sense. That's the magnetodielectric effect, which is the electron, right? But it was never a ball. Where the balls are is on the inside. That's the ion. You know what I mean? Because they're in the core of the material, okay? Because it's atomic. So I was looking at that, and now it made perfect sense altogether. I'm thinking, how the hell does a ball do all this, right? But it does it if you have a atom, which all materials have atoms, which means basically, Joe, if we want to create the core castle, it makes this very easy and very quick, okay? We just have to accumulate the ions from all the total mass of it into the center of it. Once we accumulate them into the center of it by creating impingement on the outside and that field from a Tesla coil and resonance and put it in a harmonic resonance with it, we can lift anything we want to on the planet. That's what it says. That's as simple as it gets. If that's all the understanding is, that makes perfect sense with what Egypt was doing, being that they're playing with resonance, tuning forks, you know what I mean? Stuff like that. They're looking at just basically the simple understanding of, if I take the ions and compress them into the center and I create the condition or create the fields on the outside of it, and we could do whatever we want. So what did the guy over there at the Core Castle do? If he knew that, All he had to do was create a small little box on the top of it that did that. It's just about the resonance and the harmonics of it. If he learned the harmonic, if he learned what the core of it is and the ions and what the resonance frequency of those are, then all he had to do was simply put a speaker in there that gave him different levels of it. And he could basically put it in harmonic resonance in there.
Well, I mean, it's not to mention, I'm a firm believer. Oh, sorry. Hello? No?
I'm there.
Oh, okay. Well, I'm a firm believer in, he was familiar with the CME properties of the coral itself, and understood that, there's huge amplification effects that occur over time, in the material if left exposed to any energy source long enough. So when you take something like coral that has all those cavities in it and you expose it to any sort of prolonged energy, it has massive capacitance, to hold and store that energy cyclically, and literally just have the energy caught up in all the little voids spinning up
Cavitation
around it.
effect.
Then they have exchange
Benikoff.
between them also, which then leads to massive amplification. So any energy that you leave exposed to it for long enough becomes stored, and then at that point, Grabinikov, obviously he was big on CME, and he might have even discovered CME as far as I'm aware. That was his firsthand experience with it before he ever went full blown off the charts woo, making flying pedestal machines and shit, like, or whatever he did or didn't do.
Well, think about it. The beetle shell has all those little dimples in it right there. If you remember what, oh, come on, what Bedini said, in the battery where the holes were, they would basically fill in with energy, right? Because that's what happens in the negative energy. Now that we understand that as ion energy, we basically just look at it as the same way that any cavitation in the area would create the ions in there, give you a mass amount of ions in between everything, which would give you a huge amount of energy that could change the atomic weight of the coil itself. We're right on the right track of this, Joe. It's all about that harmonic, thing. That's why if you build a city in harmonics, everybody in it does, you know what I mean? Feels better. It works better if it's in harmonic with your body. Okay. By the way, he sent me this video, Joe. So I don't know if it's true or not. So please just take that with a grain of salt. I am going to mute it.
Yeah, well, we'll watch it together and see what they're showing.
And it honestly, that's Mark Sokol right there. It looks like to me, okay? But why do they have two Buga spears? I thought it was just one. That worries me right off the bat. Not that Mark's doing it. It's
First of all, I know that they're not doing it legit because they're using DeWalt tools, so
Well, I don't mind that.
Yeah, I do, man. Those are like, you gotta use Milwaukee.
Why is there two of them? I thought it was just one guy out in the middle of whatever country it was. Hold on. Why is the lines different on it? The one on the left has the correct lines. Why is the one on the right different? The one he's messing with is different. You see it?
I thought they did find a second one, if I'm not mistaken. I thought they did.
Okay, look at the center line.
Are different. They are different. Not much different, but they're different.
Well, all it takes is you weld it together and put water pressure in it, and it makes the shape.
Yeah, okay. I get it. So what do they find inside?
Well, this is apparently what they put out. It says Buga on it, UFO footage. This guy here, UFO sightings footage is where it's coming from. They're taking a core sample out of it.
With the
Which
needle?
means that, wait, this really bothers me a little bit. If we know that it's ions in there, Joe, and we know what they're doing, why are they taking core samples out of it? Why don't they just reactivate it?
I mean, what I was kind of wondering is if they're really so stuck on what the hell is inside of it, why are they just going in on it like with nothing more than glasses? Like, I mean, don't
Yeah.
you think, like if there's some kind of foreign substance that you have no idea what it could possibly be, don't you think maybe you'd want to like hedge your bet with maybe like a little more PPE? Like I'm not even like a reasonably cautious person, and that sounds reasonable to me.
So they're saying there's a hollow structure in this one, and then this is what's in the inside of it.
Hmm.
Which that matches the picture the guy on my Gravity Flyer channel keeps putting on there.
Interesting. It looks like the core of a battery.
Well, this is different than the way they described it the first time. I want to thank this right here, Doctor. You'd probably be better saying it. Thank you very much, man, for sending me the video on this.
Doctor something in use. Dr. Zod's in use. Very good.
Carlo. He says his name Carlo. Very cool, brother.
Carlo.
Very cool.
I like that better. That's easier.
Well, it's interesting, man. I have to break down the footage of this. You know what I mean?
Mhm.
Kind of hard to see. Somebody keeps getting in the way.
It's about time that somebody drilled into the damn thing. They're treating it like some fucking religious artifact or something. You know, it's like, yo, don't you want to know what's in there? You know?
Well, a lot of people do. Remember when we had what's his name's Rod? James's big Rod over there, the Travel and Phil channel. Oh my God, James's big Rod, dude. They treated that thing like it was a gospel. You know what I mean? Like it fell off of Jesus himself.
Well, Paul is convinced that there's a video of him, like, you know, where he's like, all right, I did what you told me. Now you're going to leave me alone sort of deal. Like, as if he was on the phone, like the government was forcing him to put out like a I was lying YouTube video.
Oh,
Like, I was like, Paul, man, I just don't know, man. Like, I'm sorry. That guy. I thought he was full of shit from day one.
oh, dude. Well, if you remember, dude, we gave him hell on that thing, and he was laughing his butt off when we were doing it. Because all you could do, dude, when you bring on something that's 5 foot long and about 6 inches in diameter, I mean, dude, you're talking vibrator all day, dude. We're making jokes about it all day long.
It's funny that they have the two Buga spheres, and then he found the friggin' he found the lead mechanism, you know?
Oh.
What they didn't realize is they all have to be together. And then it you know what I mean?
It takes a full unit to make it work.
Exactly right. You need two balls in a shaft in order for it to work properly.
Oh my God. Can you imagine that flying through the air looking like that, man? Oh my God, the jokes would never end. Dude, I would build a UFO craft that looked just like that just to hear that. Just to hear the announcers on TV and the news say it.
Well, I was ahead of that one because I made the meme with the two Buga spheres and the and the thing. I don't know where it is anymore. I probably deleted it, but
Oh my God. Oh yeah, KJ was hilarious too. Oh my God. But oh man. The producer was the best, man. Okay. We're sitting over there and he starts asking him, so what does it smell like? And we just fucking lost it, dude. Oh my God, dude, it was the best. Oh, what does it smell like? It smells like your ass. That's what it smells like. Oh,
Did you
horrible.
try polishing your rod? Did it excite it?
Dude, we got so much crap for that. Oh my God. Dude, they were on me for weeks. I'm gonna.
Mhm.
I honestly think, man, the Boogosphere has a chance to being true. I'll just say it
Yeah, I
for what
mean
it
it
is.
does. I'm not gonna, I mean it looks way more legit. Like, I mean, honestly, they definitely spent a couple more dollars on Dremel bits if it was a fake.
I
Yeah.
give kudos to Mark over there at Falcon Space, man. Good job, brother, on getting the ability to, well, number one, be next to the one we always know of. And if the other one that you're working on is real, then it's awesome that you were able to do that. So shout out. Good job. So, yeah, hopefully, they figured something out. That's very interesting on what they showed in there. But not terribly difficult to figure out what's going on. I mean, we know the answer already. I think when they looked at Art's parts over there, Jared did, he had the answer right in front of him the whole time. He just didn't understand the correlation to it. And he probably did. He may, if I would have hooked it up my Tesla coil right away, and you would have got an immediate jump from it, just like Sean did. Remember we put the bismuth on the bottom, and that field broke out, and it stopped the electricity from coming down. You knew right then. You go, okay, we got something here. You know what I mean? So, yeah, all the answers were right in front of us. I'm actually ashamed of myself that I didn't have it earlier. Like all the pieces were right there. It just took a while to put them together. You know what I mean? To see exactly which direction it went into.
I'm hoping
Because
Sean could get back up and running with regular RAV experiments soon. Because I haven't seen a good old classic ball RAV in a minute. Like they're all the configurations are. I want to see the ball RAV some more.
Yeah, well, he's back in his lab. He got 2 dogs, and he was training them. You know what I mean? So he's out in the kitchen with them most of the time. So now he got back in his lab. So, and then shout out Lightspeed, man. He gave us the list of everything. Sean's buying all the parts in it, and he's finally done with the software on our stuff, and he's going to be sending it out, man. Look, Sean's going to be knee deep in that project with me, and there's going to be a ton of data, Joe. You're going to be looking at a lot of crap.
Well, thankfully, yeah. I've been, going on a year waiting for my data. Better late than never.
It's going to be one of those things, man, where all 4 of us, Richard, you, me, Sean, going to have to hook up and watch some of this stuff, because I'm almost done with everything in my garage. You know what I mean? So I can start building out my little boards with everything pre-done, and then having it done. That way I can just pull out the board and run it, and I don't have a problem, because it gets too messy in such a small area. It's driving me nuts. So
Yeah, I get that.
I did. Oh man, Joe, I put down money on another camera.
Oh yeah, why is that?
When we do that razor experiment with the mirror, I got the mirror, I got the arm. Okay, we're going to put it on there the next day. I need a dedicated camera just for that, because you don't want to move it. You know what I mean? It's not one of those things you can wheel in and wheel out. It has to stay stationary. So it has to sit going across my table. You see my table behind me. It's got to go this way, and it's got to stay in the same spot.
I mean, just my 2 cents, and it was a suggestion I made to Sean a long time ago, and so just a suggestion to you and anybody else doing experiments. Go on like Facebook Market or something, and just like look for people that are selling like 5-year-old cell phones, man. Like people that were a few years old, where they're like a couple $100 or whatever. It's nothing crazy, because the cameras on cell phones are really pretty good. Yeah. And then the awesome thing about it is, like, phones have huge storage for the most part, like compared to like you having to run around with SD cards and all this stuff. You could transfer all the stuff over Wi-Fi, from device to device. You could send it right to your computer, right, without any kind of thought whatsoever.
Well, the problem is the high voltage kills the cameras fast on the phones, and
Yeah.
you're not getting the same distance you need with a regular camera. So I have the ZV-E10, way superior to my other one in pixel. When you get in close and zoom in and out,
Mhm.
my regular Android doesn't do that. It's not as
I don't
clean.
know. I don't know. I mean, I find like you know, what do I have? I have a Samsung S24 Ultra. I find that it's, you know, the megapixel count is really, really good. And you know, you could use it in raw mode. And realistically, for the stuff that you're trying to capture, you know, you want the raw mode because you don't want algorithmic photo correction and stuff like that. You
Well,
know,
it's just seeing gas. That's, you know what I mean, the pressure difference. So I just want it as clean as I can get it, Joe. And the more
oh,
stable it is, the better. So that's what I did. I put the money down on it. I'll have it here in the next month on that. I'm going to use my regular camera that I have now to do it before then. You know what I
nice.
mean? So that
But
way we can have.
try that just to humor me too. Shoot whatever you're shooting.
Mhm.
Most cameras like have an option that it'll save it in whatever format, but it'll also save it in RAW. Because again, I think you know you could have a good lens and then have the good lens do its job, and then provide you with the raw sensor data from the lens.
Mhm.
It doesn't get any cleaner than that. It might not look as good. You might need to tweak some shit here and there after you have that raw video. But the thing is that there's no manipulation of it whatsoever, right? Because you know, again, even like I mean, I have a pretty good DSLR. It's got all different photo shooting modes. You know, it works like a manual camera for the most part, but it still too has certain filters that it runs through it runs the photos through natively.
Mhm.
Unless if you put it in raw mode. If not, then that just gives you the raw sense of data. That's all I'm saying. I mean, you know, it's if you're trying to be scientific about it, you're trying to get the best results. You don't want algorithmic correction. That's all.
Okay. Huh. I shout out Lightspeed real quick.
Right on.
Awesome work, brother. Yeah, I saw that actually on the Buga that they had the scans of it and stuff like that. We'll have to look into it deeper and come back to the topic again soon on this. So I have a second camera. Is it a 5000 series Nikon? So I don't know if that's any better. You'd know better than I do. My son had it in the room, and he let me go over it so I can charge it up and stuff and use it for a little bit. But that one's got a nice lens on it too. So
Nice. Yeah, I mean, I know a decent amount about photography, but not so much. I'm not huge on hardware because mostly I'm like broke, you know. And like anytime that I've ever like really taking any photos with like a good camera, I like spent every fucking dime I had on a camera. You know what I mean? At certain points, and then that was like it. Like there was no more to put toward it,
yeah,
you
I
know.
get it. But
So
luckily for me, I
yeah, I
have
don't
all
know
the other
what much about
parts.
the hardware, but
Yeah, I have all the rest of the parts set up. I've been on CAD, dude. Yeah, and getting it figured out and done. And I had to take about a week off from, or two from, personal reasons for everything. So,
yeah, of course. And I'm sorry for your loss and everything.
yeah, thank you. I appreciate that. I'm not trying to bring it up for that. I'm just saying that, it just took a little extra time. So, yeah, dude, I expect Joe by Monday. I'll have my next weight loss thing on the Gravity Flyer.
Cool.
So that'll be good. And then hopefully, you know what I mean, we hit a better number. And I have just a stupid feeling in my head, and I don't know why. It's probably because of what Lexi said. I'm going to have to take the plates off the original, put them on the new one, on the top and bottom plate at some point, and it has to do with the amount of extra energy you get because of the cavitation effect,
Hmm.
because of those dimples. So I'm trying to avoid it, you know what I mean? But it may come out that way. because there's not much of a difference in the top and bottom plate once they get rotating, as long as they're done right. So,
Right.
sorry, I'm reading the chat out. Hold on a second. Let me see if I can't pull up that picture real quick. Let me go back to downloads. Come on now. I wanted to show this, Joe. This is the finalized stuff that
Wow,
goes
looks
in.
nice and clean.
Oh yeah, Lightspeed, man. Check it out. Hooking everything up, man. Go
It's an
over
array
to
of sensors.
it's got everything on every one of these things. If you just zoom in, man, you got cameras, sensors, you know what I mean? Speakers on it. Everything you could want is right there
Oh yeah.
on every one of them. And then he made a program that crosses everything. It shows all the pillars and it crosses it. It gives you a digital image of what's going on. Oh, dude, the
Wow.
software on this thing is insane.
That's freaking awesome. Yeah, sky's the limit with that. I mean, it'd be cool just to be, get the sensor data off of your regular Tesla coil setups and stuff too, and run different circuits on them and see how the readings all change.
You're reading my mind, Joe.
Have a visualization of it too. Very cool.
So this is the computer program.
You know what that looks like to me? It looks like what do they call that? I think it's like a 3T, like a 3T MRI, I think they call it. It's like what they use now for brain scans.
Gotcha.
That's what the readout looks like.
Well, that's what we're doing, man. That's what we're going to be working with, dude. I'm going to do an unboxing video when it comes here. Set it up, start working. You know what I mean? Just put something simple in there without a bunch of high voltage fields, so we can kind of get the understanding of what the program's doing. You know what I mean? And what everything does. And then as soon as we get that, then we put in something like a Tesla coil, get some base readings on it, put it at low power. You know what I mean? High voltage, low power, get some readings off of it, and take it step by step before we put everything together. Because sometimes you got to learn the distance before you blow everything out in one shot, before you got any kind of understanding of what you're doing. So, and then Sean said he's 100% on board. He's already buying the parts to put those pillars together himself. And he's going to be running the exact same program, Joe. So like I said, dude, it's going to be really, really a lot of data from both of us, sometimes on some various different things so we can calculate what's going on. And then we're going to have everything. There should be no secret by the time we're done.
Yeah, that's freaking awesome. It's like a 3D electromagnetic scan.
Yeah. Well, it's only going to get better. You know what I mean? The more information we get, then, Lightspeed can go out there and see where it's needed to tweak anything. And then, you know what I mean? That's what I think is so fascinating about this. It's one of those things that we're directly working with him so he can improve the program so that others, when they get it, buy it later on or whatever, that they have a fully working system. So that helps him, and it helps us show everything on the Gravity Flyer and the RAV, the Bettini, everything. That's why it's so important to have all these other things built around it. We could just put them in there and find out whatever they did.
What I anticipate, and I am excited to see, isn't only where things can be improved or what the numbers look like. What I'm interested in seeing is the crossover similarities from one thing to the next. So where you're going to start to see the mechanisms. That's what that's going to be. And my hypothesis is it's all the same. It's all the same. You're going to do the same mechanism of everything.
Well, we're going to define where they say cold energy. You know what I mean? We'll define where it says hot energy, things like that. Things that basically a lot of people use the words for. Now
Mhm.
physics is going to be able to correlate it and put it in the correct terms together, right?
That's
And
they'll
then,
still find the reason to naysay it.
well, hey, I'm just saying it takes out all the doubt. It takes out all the misunderstandings and everything and shows it. So they're going to be looking at it going, you know what? We've seen this before. This is the correct name and verbiage. You know what I mean? And they can
Right. I
start
agree.
correlating the ideas. So I think it's fantastic, man.
No,
Right
it's
on, Thomas.
exciting times we live in, I tell you.
Oh, dude, I'm, dude, this is just what I need. I need to be knee deep in this stuff, you know what I mean, for quite a while. So, and then I'm writing my presentation for Tesla Tech, Joe.
Nice.
So it's incorporating all this because it's on inertial mass reduction and showing the gravity flow, showing fields, showing what it's doing, how it all correlates together. It all ties into exactly what we're doing. And I'm hoping we get enough time on that entire program so that I can bring the receipts and just be like, boom. You know what I mean? Like mic drop when I get there. Because I think we're going to be the only ones that have something like that, where it's like, there's no question anymore.
Right. No, I don't disagree. I mean that's the thing about this is like, you can set up an experiment, you could have a repeatable result. It could be anomalous, right? You could show it, people can see it, and they'll still be like, great, where's the data? Where's the equation?
Yeah.
It's like talking to a fucking stone. It's like
No, I get it. That's why I'm, dude, I'm going to jump through every hoop it's necessary to get this done, Joe. That's just the way it is. So I reset my garage, you know that. I set everything up to work good. Dude, I got some sick equipment in here now. You know what I mean? So I got a giant TV waiting for everything, and I'm thinking about upgrading my second computer for this, depending if the other one can't handle it or not. And it's just an isolated system that we can run on there, and it only goes online to transfer data, or it may just pull the data from it, and do however they want to do it. But I don't really want it to go anywhere. I want it to be in one system that only connects to Richard over there, so that he can, do everything he needs to do. And
right,
then,
something dedicated, you mean?
yeah. That's what I'm trying to say.
I got you.
But I pulled out some printers, Joe. I got big freaking printers now. So I'll be able to print out different parts in this stuff to make it easier. And I found one of the perfect shieldings for everything that we were talking about. And then, did you know that you can use injection molding to inject bismuth inside of a shell because of the temperature of the bismuth itself?
I had actually heard this. In fact, there's a guy that got really, really rich, casting bismuth. Because apparently casting bismuth isn't the easiest thing, just in general.
Yeah.
But he made he brags about it all the time because the guy's a dickbag. But he makes like shitty animal sculptures that like I couldn't even imagine who would want one of these things. But he makes them out of bismuth, and then he found a way, probably through electrolysis, if I had to guess, to oxidize the bismuth in very specific parts, like the specific colors. So that's his sculptures, but his sculptures are like this big, and they're like $1,000, and it's got like $10 worth of bismuth in it.
Yeah.
Well, and so I'm saying, you could do that.
Bismuth is $80 per pound on Amazon, and it's 99.9% pure.
Mm-hmm.
So, but that method I was telling you about, Joe, and welding and stuff, I've seen a lot of people do that. They basically make how do I say it? They make a baseball, right? They cut out the pieces of a baseball and then they weld it. and then they pressurize the inside with water, and it makes perfect spheres where you can just grind off the welds on the outside and clean them up, polish them, and everything else. Totally cool method to doing things, man. They were making pillow structures, they're making spheres out of them. They're doing everything. Dude, I was fascinated. I sat there for hours watching this thing. Just the fact that high pressure water can, you know what I mean, blow up metal like that.
Yes, it can. In fact, I know all about it because I used to have an affinity for a hydroform frame of bike. So, like, yeah, this bike that I used to like, they used to hydroform the frames, and I owned I don't know, on like 15 of them at one time.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I used to buy them up anytime I saw them and repair. You know, I would store them and stuff.
Wow.
And then I would never sold them because I just liked them. So
I don't blame you, man.
specialized, you know, specialized, made hydroform BMXs, man. That's
Yeah, just someone was asking Sean is in the chat. If you ever watch my channel and you look at the shorts on there and you see all the rap videos, that's Sean. Me, Sean, and Joe work together on this channel, and Sean sends all the rap videos over, and we put them up. Here's Sean right here, hanging out in the chat under disguise. Sean's
Right
totally awesome guy, man. He does a lot of stuff. Sean helped me build my first Tesla coil, as a matter of fact. When mine was on fire, he stepped in and was like, let me just help you fix this because you're a total disaster. So he was laughing at me because it was like smoking, and I'm just walking over to it slow as hell. Yeah. Never forget that, Dave, man. That was awesome.
right on, Sean. Good looking out, man. We love it.
Right on, man. Oh, all right, Joe. Yeah, he said this. I'm sorry, guys. I wear a denture. It comes out wrong all the time. Yeah. Dude, I try to say the right word. It never comes out right. So everybody that I say that to, oh, yeah, he's talking about testicles again. Yeah, thanks.
Testicle coils.
Testicles. He goes, testicles. And then I go out and build round ones. So that doesn't help, Joe.
No.
I built a peanut one, so people are like, okay, Nathan, you must be having a fascination, when it's really just a lisp in my mouth. Oh, okay, dude, I shouldn't have said that. Oh, that sounded horrible.
Yeah, give this
Okay.
man some of that pink loot stuff. You know, get it like saddled properly.
All right, guys, we're going to take off for the day. I just want to give some shout outs out here. Darren, I want to thank you very much for the super sticker, man. Awesome. 5 Old Men Build memberships from me out there, man. Vortex out there, man. Thank you very much, brother. We'll hope to catch up with you here soon. I want to shout out Yoni. He became a moderator on the channel, man. He's been a member for 10 months. Totally awesome, dude. I want to shout out Traveling Fools, man. Of course, they're talking about his little balls again. Yeah. Shout out Traveling Fools, man. I'll be on there tonight. It'll be on my channel here in the next, what is it? It's 4:15 now, so it'll be on at 7:30. So about 3 hours and 15 minutes. We'll be hanging out over there, man. If you guys haven't watched the show before, it's just pure comedy, man. We hang out and have a great time, just a bunch of people laughing. So I don't remember what we're talking about tonight, but it's always fun, man.
Oh, one more thing, because I think he's going to lose his mind. The doctor guy wants to know what we think about the new government website that launched today. I mean, I heard, and I haven't went there to check it out myself, so this is all hearsay, so whatever. I mean, it more or less looks like a promotional thing for like that Steven Spielberg movie, to be honest with you. That's what people were saying.
It's just a bunch of UFO content, right? Things that they see in the, I mean, on their videos and stuff.
It was like that, no, because it was, I think it was like aliens.gov or some shit.
Yeah, right.
Like, or war.aliens.gov. I have no idea. Something like that.
Yeah, we'll have to check it out in the future if it
Keep
just
saying
came up.
no. I mean, so to answer the question that you posed numerous times tonight, we were in the middle of talking about stuff, so I wasn't going to sidetrack that. But yeah, I have no idea if that's something else. You want to put us onto it though? We'll look, and if it's something cool, we'll talk about it.
Well, we'll look at it and we find some interesting stuff. We'll do a whole show on it. I don't mind that. We're allowed to play all the videos on it, so I don't have a problem whatsoever.
Cool.
So cool deal, man. I want to thank everybody, man, for hanging out with us today. Have a great night.
Right on. Peace and love.
The old man Bill. The old man Bill. The old man Bill. The old man builds. The old man builds is broken in the head. People not seeing reality has put them in the red. Where conscious and spirituality been stricken from the norm and replaced with the ignorance of basic magnetic form. The geometry of God keeps running through his head. That's what makes old man builds broken in the head. The old man builds. The old man builds. Spheres of destiny are spinning in his mind, making him travel back and forth in time, battling the establishment for just a little recognition. Has him forcing the world to understand his premonition. That world will have all the technology in the end, even if it means his life will fail to instead. The old man builds. The old man builds. The old man builds. The old man builds. Fears of destiny are spinning in his mind, making him travel back and forth in time, battling the establishment for just a little recognition. Has him forcing the world to understand his premonition. That world will have all the technology in the end, even if it means his life will fail to extend. The old man builds. The old man builds. The old man builds. The old man builds. Fears of destiny are spinning in his mind, making him travel back and forth in time, battling the establishment for just a little recognition. Has him forcing the world to understand his premonition. That world will have all the technology in the end, even if it means his life will fail to extend. The old man builds.